We have talked in the past quite a lot about child poverty and the effect of the two-child cap. Can you just rehearse for people listening why it's such an important issue?
It sets the life course going on certain tracks if children grow up in poverty. Let's talk firstly about what we know. Recently, infant mortality for the most deprived children growing into being born in the most deprived areas, infant mortality has risen, actually gone up, and the inequalities in infant mortality have got bigger. Now, the level is very low historically. We're not living in Victorian times, but it's an indicator that things are going wrong. A second troubling issue relates to nutrition. The height of 5-year-old children in the UK, in the 1980s, we ranked 60th among 200 countries in the height of 5-year-old children. We've slipped back. We now rank about 100 out of 200 countries.
And is that a good indicator of poverty and malnutrition?
Absolutely. And the height of 5-year-old children started to decline around 2014. It looks like an effect of austerity. And at the same time as children are not getting enough to eat and therefore growing, they're also suffering obesity. Because if you're food insecure, and the Food Foundation is just about to publish its latest statistics, 18% of families with children in the UK are food insecure. And if you're food insecure, it means you feed your children whatever you can lay your hands on. And what we see is an unhealthy pattern of eating in poorer households. So if you are in the bottom 20% of household income and you're a family with children, you would have to pay 70% of your household income to follow the government's healthy eating advice.
Almost impossible. So Michael, I'm sorry to interrupt, but ministers are saying to me and to other journalists, look, we simply don't have the money for this and for public sector pay demands that are coming up now. We will get rid of it. We hate it too, but people are going to have to wait. They may have to wait for a couple of years until the economy is in a stronger position. What would you say to them?
Well, my role is to tell them the effects of the particular thing I'm concerned with, which is child poverty. And I can say that if you consign something like 1.6 million children to further hardship, that's going to affect their trajectory for the rest of their lives. I can't tell you how to juggle public sector pay and child poverty, but I can tell you the thing that I'm concerned with, and it will damage children's mental health. It'll damage their physical health. We know the stress of poverty in parents gets passed on to the children, increasing mental illness, making it more difficult for children to learn, and that affects them for the rest of their lives.
And the last thing I want to do is to try and put words into your mouth, and I'm sure you would spit them straight back at me if I tried. But in a sense, is what we are saying here, it's okay to wait for taxpayers, it's okay to wait for MPs, it's okay to wait for the general public perhaps, but these children can't wait for another 2 or 3 years before their poverty is addressed.
These children can't wait. And it also bothers me of what it says about us as a society. It's almost a form of eugenics, saying if poor families choose to have extra children, we're going to clobber them. I mean, you put it that the taxpayer doesn't want to pay for people's irresponsible choices. Well, I think that's too limited an approach to this issue. If poor families have more children, I personally would like my taxes to support them. I don't want those children to grow up in poverty.
It's certainly not the fault of the children. Do you think there is a kind of community or even racial aspect to this, that people see particular communities having more children and that reduces the general support for this kind of measure?
It's really troubling. You know, if somebody buys a Porsche motor car, We don't say, how can you be so irresponsible to buy that Porsche, spend all that money? You could get by in a simpler car. Why have you wasted your money like that? But if a poor family has a third child, we say, why are you being so irresponsible? This is quite wrong, quite wrong. And those children, as you said, cannot wait.
I suppose the answer is that the owner of the Porsche isn't going to get the taxpayer to pay for it. But what do you feel yourself if this measure is confirmed that it's going to carry on the two-child cap for maybe several years? What's your feeling about it?
I'm delighted that the government has set up a poverty task force. I think they're right to want to look at the root causes of poverty and take the actions that are necessary across the board. But I also think the combination of low pay for people in work and welfare benefits that don't meet the absolute necessities of life, that are too low to meet the necessities of life, are damaging children. And we need to deal with both of those issues, low pay and welfare benefits that don't meet the essentials of life. And the sooner they can do it, the better.
This is not, so far as I can tell, in any sense a left-wing revolt inside the Labour Party. I think there's almost nobody inside the Labour Party who likes the idea of this cap. They all talk privately about how much they hate it. But it's certainly a test of where authority lies in this new government, and it lies with the Treasury.
Well, I mean, I'm not a politician. As I said, no. I'm a scientist and I've got particular concerns. But I do sympathize. The Chancellor, and you and I, Andrew, spoke about this before the election.
We did.
The Chancellor has made very firm commitments and she's trying to stick to them. I'm delighted we've got a sensible government, but I am and remain deeply concerned about child poverty.
Well, Sir Michael, I know most of the MPs involved are probably in the House of Commons chamber at the moment, so they may not be listening to this conversation, but I jolly well wish they had been. Thank you so much for joining me.